all these solutions that we've put up, right, are actually appropriate solutions. But I think, it's when you use it, how you use it, and at what stage you use it that matters. So, being solution focused and identifying what your child needs is really an important part of the process. Sometimes, depending on the circumstances of the environment that you are in, distracting them can also be helpful. It's also very important to understand what they want. So earlier we were talking about expressing that, they have difficulties communicating, right? So, trying to identify their needs and wants, that's important. Sometimes it's also important to say no and to set that appropriate boundary. So I have some suggestions on how to handle tantrums. So the first thing I will always highly recommend will be for parents to pause first. Why this is an important first step is because whatever our reaction is, we must always remember that our children observing and will likely model. So, for example, if we get frustrated and then we express that frustration openly, quickly, and in an unhealthy way, children are like sponges. The younger they are, the quicker they absorb and the more they absorb. So, they are likely to also express frustration in a very similar way as us. Then the second thing that I would get parents to consider thinking would be when we are expressing that frustration and when we are, kind of punishing them, is it a result of our own frustration or is it really healthy and helpful for our children? So first is to stop. So when you stop, what you're doing is you are trying to slow down your internal processes. You're trying to breathe into the moment. You're trying not to react immediately to a situation. And I imagine that this would be helpful whether or not it's just dealing with your children or also, in a workplace or relationships with your friends and your family members. So pause first and just notice how you're feeling. Because if that feeling is really intense and you feel like I actually cannot cope with this, I'm going to explode, then it's more helpful that you walk away and manage that stress first before you come back and manage the situation with your child. Then the second is don't immediately focus on the solution first. So understanding must always precede advice. So you must always try to understand what your child is experiencing, what is happening for them, and try to focus on emotions and validate their emotions before you go and provide any advice. So similarly, if I use a husband and wife example, husband comes back, tells you that I've had a difficult day at work, and maybe, husband is expressing some tiredness or frustration, and you respond by saying, oh, you should just quit this job, without really understanding what is happening and without actually focusing or validating that emotion. I imagine that that could be quite an unhelpful comment. Likewise, like I say, in children, they're not really able to express how they're feeling to you, or be able to string them into words, especially if they're very young, right? So it would likely come across as a tantrum. So like earlier, when Dr. Wong also shared that, when you're tired, for adults as well, when you're tired, you tend to be a bit more grumpy and crabby. Same thing for children, and that is expressed as tantrums. So validate the emotions first. That can sound something like, hey, I can see that you are very upset right now. I can see that you're feeling whatever they're feeling at the moment. Okay. Thirdly, I would want to deal with the emotion first before I deal with the behavior. So dealing with the emotion first means it can come in a form of soothing them. So think about yourself like a very soothing, warm blanket. You want to keep them safe and comfortable. So you can do that by cuddling, by touching them, by teaching them how to regulate their mood by breathing. So you can actually do this as young as 2 years old.
you can start to teach them that, hey, you can take a deep breath in, and then you can breathe out. And usually about that time, they can also start counting. So you can count together with them. So what you're doing is you're modeling healthy behavior to deal with stress. You are also teaching them how to regulate their emotions. Okay. Then number 4, I would recommend setting appropriate boundaries. So there are many different types of parenting. We've got authoritarian parenting, which is I am the parent, you are the child. So whatever I say, you just have to listen and execute. That tends to be one of the highest predictor of poor relationship between parents and children. And then we've also got the permissive kind of parenting, which is I allow you to walk all over me. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. If you ask me for a certain toy or object, I will give it to you. Unfortunately, in my experience, a lot of times in our society, parents may be a little bit more permissive as a result of guilt. So they overcompensate because, I'm busy with work, I'm not coping. So, because I wasn't there to spend time with my children, so I will overcompensate by giving them whatever they want. That's what we call permissive parenting. That's not very helpful as well. Then we've got the neglectful parenting, which is I don't actually really care or know what is happening with my child's life. I'm just in my own world and my children are in their own world. That is also not very helpful. So the kind of parenting that we want to nurture is what we call authoritative parenting, which is setting appropriate boundaries, which means you need to be able to say no assertively, because you are a parent and you're not a friend after all. But you also need to explain to them why you are saying no. So the explaining part is really quite important because you want to help them understand that you have an appropriate reason for your instructions. And you also want to kind of set conditions with good behavior if they want something. So that would counter that permissive parenting, right? Which is, whatever you're asking me for, I will give it to you. But here you're saying that, hey, if you can show me that you have actually tried your best for your exams, for the primary school kids, or if you can show me that you tried your best by sitting in your chair throughout your meal for the younger kids, then, we would kind of reinforce that and kind of want to reward that good behavior. And we want to be very specific with that as well, saying that, hey, I'm very proud of you for being able to sit through dinner. But I wouldn't say like well done, because well done is just very general, and you don't actually teach the child that, hey, this is the behavior that I want. So a lot of times with tantrums, right, we want to also focus on managing good, appropriate behavior, which is what we call positive reinforcement. Unfortunately, in our culture, right, a lot of times we are kind of brought up to, we are not really praised in our culture. And it's more so that if you've done something wrong, you'll be punished. And that's what we call negative reinforcement in psychology. So to manage the tantrum, we want to kind of counter that by putting more attention to healthy, good behavior when they present themselves. And then lastly, if the tantrum persists, what I would recommend is to wait. Wait until we have calmed down. Wait until the children have calmed down to explain to them why and how they should behave.